Today we're working with some grain spawn. So this has been sitting out since last night. Basically just measured out some grain into these bags. At that point I added some water to bring the moisture content between 38 to 42%, and just let it soak so these grains can kind of absorb that water before I add them into the sterilization process. That way we get a nice even moisture consistency throughout the grain. And we're just running some experiments with some different grain types. This is all from a local farm called BKW Farms. They grow a lot of different varieties of wheat, so we're just testing out several different varieties that are locally sourced, and just trying to see if one of them might be, have benefits over the others. So at the very end, we have some soft white wheat. So that's another wheat berry that we could use. Here's a classic one that I've used for a while in the past, and time to time. It's called hard red winter wheat. Then we have some red fife wheat, some inkhorn, and some spelt. This one right here is some white Sonora wheat. So then we have some Durham wheat and some Khorasan wheat. So this one's kind of interesting. It has a longer, basically a longer grain to it, kind of. And this is just a BKW Farms blend. So it's just like all of them that we had left over. We just combined it in a bag. So we'll get this sterilized and inoculated, and we'll just kind of monitor them and just see what we notice. So when I do soak the grain, before I fold it up and add it to the sterilizer, just make sure that I give it one last, basically like a nice shake. So that way we can mix the grains. The bottom layer can basically mix up to the top, and we can make sure we don't have any dry spots in the grain when we go to sterilize. And really the only thing that'll do is just make it a lot more tedious to work with when it comes down to shake. The grain will kind of get hard and form like a brick. But by doing this, it prevents that, and just have a nice, easy grain to work with. They have a bunch of different varieties of wheat that they grow. So we're just basically running them through some tests and just seeing which ones might, if there's anything beneficial using one versus the other. But mainly we use milo and millet. That's our grain that we use for most of our production around here. Just due to those grains being, they're my favorite grains to use for spawn. Due to the spherical shape of the grains, you get a lot more inoculation points. But when that's not available, I do like to opt in for wheat. And typically in the past, it's been like a hard red winter wheat that I like to use, or a soft red winter wheat. But since there's a lot of varieties that this farm produces that I've actually never had the chance to try yet, figured we'd just run them through and see what's going on. So these are going to be inoculated with just a variety of some of the gourmet species that we grow. Mainly lion's mane. We'll be inoculating a lot of this with lion's mane actually, because we're going to be growing a lot of lion's mane right now. It's kind of like the bulk of our upcoming production. So we're going to be doing a lot of lion's mane. We'll be testing some oyster on this as well. We'll just do a little bit of the library, and if everything works out well, we'll kind of just start applying every strain to these grains. Typically with mushrooms though, I find that as long as the moisture content's correct and everything's sterile, most mushroom species will basically take to any grain. I've used different wheats, rye, oats, different milos, millets. I've even used like flaxseed before. You can really get experimental, rice, oats. So it's really all up to preference at the end of the day, and availability. If you could source something locally, that's the best bet. I know a lot of the millet comes from, out here in Arizona, a lot of our millet's grown in Colorado. So it can rise the cost up a little bit. So I actually just met this farm recently, and they came, David from BKW actually came up to do a little facility tour, and saw that we were using grain and decided to bring in some different samples that he grows at his farm. So some of these, like the Durham wheat, is used to make pasta and stuff like that, and I believe they ship that out to Italy. So that's grown out here. And we have the white Sonora, so maybe that's it's like a local heritage grain or something. Yeah, we can see the wheat berries kind of have hydrated, and you can see like the different sizes on some of them. And yeah, I mean, they do look really good. Wheat is a great grain for using as spawn. I actually like it, better than rye, better than oats. For me, it's just right there, kind of right under milo and millet. I feel like the mycelium really breaks it down once it's hydrated. Grains like oats seem like they have like a hard outer shell, and I guess that could be a benefit to people that are newer to cultivation, where you kind of have a little bit of forgiveness when it comes to overhydration with like oats and stuff like that. Wheat berries is one that, if you do overhydrate it, the grain can actually get real soft, and it can create a lot of starch, and it could actually hinder growth. But if you can really dial in the moisture content, then I think wheat is one of the good grains to use. It's real nutritious, and the mycelium really loves it. And we noticed after the overnight soak, the grain has actually doubled in size. So I add the dry grain, the water, and at this point we don't even see any water moving around in the bag. So the grain has really absorbed all that water, and we just have really good hydrated grain that is ready to be sterilized and basically receive some healthy mycelium. And go from there. So yeah, this grain right here I'm familiar with. This is the hard red, so I already kind of know what to expect from this one because I've worked with it quite a bit. And then yeah, right now I'm using the 3T bags. So this is like a 3T growing bag made by Unicorn, and it contains it basically has a 0.2 micron filter patch. So this is the filter that I would use for any of our grain. So this one will provide like the optimum filtration rate for contaminants and stuff like that, allowing air exchange and colonization. The 3T spawn bag I like to use for like spawn bags up to 6, maybe 7 pounds. And then we also have like a 3TL, which is a little bit longer, and we can actually get about like 8-9 pounds of grain in that bag. So these will all be G1s. They'll receive a fresh culture, and then I'll use these if I want to take it up a notch and make a bigger spawn bag. I'll just go for the 3TL and make like an 8 to 9 pound spawn bag. And then we have the soft white. So something about this grain right here, it has a nice white color. That could be, a disadvantage to newer cultivators when, you're watching the mycelium grow. I guess it depends, but a lot of people like a nice darker grain. That way you could kind of see the mycelium, and if there's anything else that you would notice, it'd be really easily visible. All right, so I'll stack those right there. I'll make sure everything is kind of organized so I know which grain is what, and we'll load these accordingly. This is an interesting looking grain. It's a wheat. It's called Karossen, but it kind of looks like a hybrid variety of, I don't know, it looks like something that you would see in like a rye grain and a rice. I don't know, it has like it's a longer grain than you would usually see with other wheats, like that one for instance. And that could be, for me, I personally like the smaller ones, so like one handful of grains from this bag compared to a handful of grains from that bag. In the same handful, I'm going to have more inoculation points with a bag. with a grain like this due to the smaller size. And when I pour that into a bag of sawdust, I'm going to have a lot more points that are going to basically be a point for mycelium growth. All right, the last bag. And this is just some spare grain that was left over from making all this. So it's just like a blend of everything. And just go ahead and make sure we don't just use everything we have. So all right, so we'll get that in the sterilizer here soon, and probably within the next day or so it'll be ready to, well, by tomorrow it'll be ready to start inoculating it, and we can start looking at the growth and monitoring the spawn.